Rob Reiner was a titan of American cinema who left a massive mark on Hollywood. Born into a world of laughter, as the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner, he had to carve his own unique path. Most knew him as the Meathead from All in the Family, but his true legacy was behind the camera. He shaped the landscape of the 80s and 90s with films that remain classics. His journey was one of constant reinvention, from actor to director to activist. Born in the Bronx in 1947, Rob grew up in the shadow of his famous father, Carl Reiner. The home was filled with comedy icons like Mel Brooks, which set a high bar for the young boy. He initially wanted to be a baseball player, but the pull of the arts was too strong to ignore. He constantly felt the pressure to be funny and smart to prove that he was not just the son of a genius. This early need to prove himself became a driving force throughout his career. Rob started his professional life writing for shows like the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. It was not an easy start, as he struggled to find his own creative voice distinct from his father. He felt the heavy weight of expectation on his shoulders every single day. The industry saw him merely as Carl Reiner's kid, a label he desperately wanted to shed. He took small roles in various shows and movies, looking for that one big break that would define his own identity. The massive breakthrough came when he was cast as Michael Stivic in the hit show All in the Family. The character, known affectionately as Meathead, became a cultural phenomenon across America. Playing the liberal son-in-law to the conservative Archie Bunker defined an entire generation. Rob won 2 Emmy Awards for this role, proving his acting abilities. However, the success brought a trap, as he was now typecast as the argumentative hippie, which limited his options. Breaking away from the Meathead persona was the hardest challenge of his professional life. He turned to directing to regain control over his creative destiny and show his true range. His directorial debut was This Is Spinal Tap, a mockumentary that revolutionized comedy. It was a risky move that could have ended his career before it began, but his instinct for satire was sharp, and the film became a cult classic, showing he had a unique voice of his own. His next major triumph was Stand By Me, a film that showcased his incredible emotional depth. Based on a Stephen King novella, it was a significant departure from pure comedy. Rob connected deeply with the story of young boys coming of age and finding their path. He infused the film with his own memories of childhood and insecurity. The scene where the boys share their fears around the campfire remains one of the most touching moments in cinema history. Rob continued his winning streak with The Princess Bride, which became a beloved favorite. This fairy tale adventure was a genre-bending masterpiece that balanced romance comedy and action perfectly. He directed it with such heart that it became a classic for all ages. During filming, he famously laughed so hard that he had to leave the set to avoid ruining the takes. His joy and passion were infectious, creating an environment where actors could thrive. Perhaps his most personal film was When Harry Met Sally, which redefined the romantic comedy genre. Rob used his own experiences as a single man to shape the character of Harry. The film asked the eternal question of whether men and women can just be friends without sex getting in the way. It was a massive hit that solidified his status as a top director. His collaboration with Nora Ephron was magical, creating dialogue that is still quoted by lovers everywhere. Not content with just comedy, Rob returned to Stephen King territory with the thriller Misery. It was a psychological masterpiece that kept audiences on the edge of their seats. Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her terrifying performance thanks to Rob's direction. He showed the world that he could handle tension and horror just as well as humor. This versatility made him a rare breed in Hollywood, as he was no longer just a comedy director, but a complete filmmaker. Then came the intense legal drama, A Few Good Men, which garnered huge acclaim. Working with heavyweights like Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise was a new level of pressure. The film was intense and demanded absolute precision in every scene. Rob managed the egos and the tension on set with grace. The famous courtroom scene is a testament to his ability to build drama. The film was nominated for Best Picture, bringing him closer to the prestige he had always sought. However, every career has its low points, and North was a critical disaster. Roger Ebert famously hated it, calling it one of the worst films ever made. This failure hit Rob hard after a string of massive hits. He had to face the brutal reality of rejection and public criticism. It was a humbling experience that shook his confidence deeply. He realized that not every risk pays off. The criticism was harsh and personal, forcing him to re-evaluate his creative choices. Beyond cinema, Rob became a passionate political activist fighting for what he believed. He used his fame and resources to fight for causes like marriage equality and education. He co-founded the American Foundation for Equal Rights to fight for justice. This shift to activism showed a man who wanted to make a real difference in the world. He was not satisfied with entertaining people, he wanted to change society. His political involvement became truly important. His personal life also had its ups and downs under the public eye. His marriage to Penny Marshall was high profile, but it eventually ended in divorce. The pain of failed relationships often found its way into his work, adding realism. He later found stability with Michele Singer, with whom he built a family and life. Finding balance between a demanding career and a happy home life was a constant struggle. He learned that success in Hollywood does not guarantee happiness. Rob co-founded Castle Rock Entertainment, a production company that became a powerhouse. They produced massive hits like Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption, defining an era. Being a studio boss gave him power, but it also added immense stress. He had to make tough business decisions that affected people's livelihoods daily. The responsibility of running a major company weighed on him. He was no longer just an artist, he was a businessman navigating a hard industry. The greatest trauma of his life was the decline and death of his father, Carl. Carl was his hero, his mentor, and his best friend throughout his life. Watching him age and pass away in 2020 was devastating for Rob. He had spent his whole life trying to make his father proud. The loss left a massive void in his heart that never filled. He often spoke about how he called his dad every day, and when that phone stopped ringing, the silence was deafening. Rob also faced private struggles involving his son Nick Reiner, who battled addiction. The relationship was complex and fraught with the pain of watching a child suffer. Nick had a troubled history that occasionally surfaced in the media, causing family strain. Rob tried to support his son through various challenges, but the path was rocky. This family dynamic was a source of private pain behind the public success, and it would eventually lead to a tragic end. Now in his 70s, Rob faced the reality of his own mortality. He saw the industry change, becoming dominated by superhero franchises he did not understand. The mid-budget human stories he excelled at were harder to make, which frustrated him. He felt like a guardian of a bygone era of filmmaking. Yet he continued to work driven by the same passion that fueled him as a young man. He refused to just fade away and kept directing until the very end of his life. In his final years, he remained vocal and active in both film and politics. He directed a documentary about his friend Albert Brooks returning to his comedy roots. It reflected on the golden age of humor that he and his father helped shape. Working on this film was therapeutic and a celebration of friendship. It reminded him of why he fell in love with show business in the first place. It was a love letter to comedy and his peers before the final curtain. The final chapter of his life was written in a shocking and tragic manner. On December 14, 2025, Rob Reiner and his wife Michele were found dead. They were discovered in their Brentwood home with apparent stab wounds in a horrific scene. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood. To make the tragedy even darker, their son Nick Reiner was arrested in connection with the deaths. It was a heartbreaking end to a legendary life. Rob Reiner left behind a legacy of laughter, tears, and profound tragedy. He went from being the son of a legend to becoming a legend himself before meeting a dark end. His films have touched millions, providing comfort and joy that will outlast his death. The horrifying manner of his passing cannot erase the brilliance of his work. He remains a giant of cinema who taught us how to love and laugh. His art will live on long after the credits roll on his life.